The human body is an incredible machine, but it has a breaking point. Most people find theirs at the end of a marathon, or after a long day of hard physical labor. But every now and then, an individual comes along who pushes past that invisible barrier, stepping into a realm of endurance that seems almost supernatural. In August of 2026, an American runner named Mark Dowdle did exactly that. He stepped onto the starting line of the last Seoul Ultra, a race designed not just to test an athlete's physical limits but to completely dismantle their psychological defenses. To understand what Mark accomplished, you have to understand the sheer cruelty of the backyard ultra format. There is no finish line. There is no set distance. You do not win by being the fastest. You win by being the last person willing to suffer. The rules dictate that every single hour on the hour, competitors must complete a loop measuring exactly 4.167 miles. If you finish the loop in 40 minutes, you get 20 minutes to rest, eat, and change your shoes. If you finish in 59 minutes, you have 60 seconds to breathe before the whistle blows again. If you are not in the starting corral when the next hour begins, your race is over. It is a relentless, ticking clock that slowly eats away at your sanity. As the race began, the atmosphere was filled with the usual nervous excitement. Dozens of elite runners from all over the world started together, their strides light and their spirits high. Mark settled into a steady, metered rhythm. In the early stages, a backyard ultra feels deceptively manageable. The pace is conversational, the daytime weather is usually cooperative, and the miles click away without much protest from the muscles. But as the first 24 hours passed, the easy smiles began to fade. The distance crept past 100 miles, a milestone that would be the crowning achievement of a lifetime for most runners, but here, it was merely the opening act. The field began to thin out as the first waves of exhaustion claimed the runners who had gone out too fast or whose minds simply refused to accept the repetition. By the second day, the race had transformed into a completely different beast. The sun beat down during the day, baking the trail, only for the temperature to plunge as darkness returned. Sleep deprivation became the loops. You cannot truly sleep. You can only close your eyes, elevate your legs, and pray that your mind drifts off for a few microseconds before the cruel blast of the whistle shocks you back into reality. Mark entered a zone of intense, quiet focus. While others began to stumble, his form remained disciplined. He treated each loop not as part of a massive, multi-day journey but as an isolated event. He was living entirely in the present moment, refusing to look ahead to the next hour or look back at the miles already logged in his legs. By the time the third day arrived, the starting corral looked like a ghost town. The vibrant crowd of competitors had been reduced to a tiny fraction of survivalists. This was the point where the physical pain evolved into something psychological. The human brain is hardwired to protect the body from self-destruction, and after dozens of hours of continuous movement, it starts sending frantic alarm signals. Hallucinations are common in the deep night of a backyard ultra. Runners see shapes moving in the shadows, hear voices in the wind, and lose track of where they are. Every muscle screams for mercy, and every joint feels like it is filled with broken glass. Yet, Mark kept standing up. Every time the clock struck the hour, he walked back to the line, his face a mask of pure determination. Eventually, the event boiled down to an epic, two-man duel that will be remembered in the history of endurance sports. It was Mark Dowdle, representing the United States, and Ayyoub El Osrouti, a legendary competitor from Germany known to the community as Ello. The rest of the field had vanished, leaving only these two warriors to battle the clock and each other. For hours, they ran side by side, a silent pact of suffering binding them together. In a backyard ultra, you cannot win without a great opponent. The rules state that if the second-to-last runner quits, the remaining runner must complete one final solo loop to secure the victory. This means that Ello was pushing Mark to his absolute limit, and Mark was doing the same for flew past 300 miles. Then 350 miles. The psychological warfare reached a crescendo as the race passed the 80-hour mark. It was no longer about lung capacity or leg strength. It was a test of who could tolerate the most agony without surrendering. Mark watched the sun set and rise again, marking the passage of time not by days, but by the endless cycle of light and dark on the trail. His feet were battered, his body was running on pure adrenaline and survival instinct, but his eyes remained fixed on the trail ahead. Ello matched him step for step, hour after hour, pushing the boundaries of what anyone thought a human being could endure. They were entering uncharted territory, rewriting the limits of human performance with every single stride. The climax arrived in the 93rd hour. Ello, who had fought with the heart of a lion for nearly 4 days, went out and completed his 93rd loop. It was an astonishing display of grit, but the human body ultimately has a definitive wall, and Ello had finally hit his. As the whistle blew for the 94th hour, the German competitor could no longer step up to the line. He had given everything he had, pushing the competition to a staggering length. But for Mark, the job was not quite finished. To be crowned the official champion, he had to go out into the woods and complete one last, lonely loop entirely by himself. That 94th hour was the most emotional segment of the entire journey. Mark stepped into the starting corral alone. The silence was deafening. There was no rival next to him to share the burden, just the quiet rustle of the trees and the weight of nearly 395 miles in his legs. Every single step of that final 4-mile loop was an exercise in pure willpower. He wasn't just running against the clock anymore, he was running for everyone who had ever doubted what the human spirit could achieve. When he finally rounded the last bend and crossed the finish line for the 94th time, the exhaustion gave way to an overwhelming wave of relief and triumph. He had survived 94 hours of continuous running. Mark Dowdle was the last man standing, leaving an indelible mark on the world of ultrarunning and proving that our true limits are far beyond what we imagine.